Hello, and welcome to the Chicago Humanities Festival and today's Chicago Neighborhood Check-in on community organizing, this year's final installment in a series of programs exploring big topics at a very local level. My name is Ira S. Murfin, and I am the Program Manager for Neighborhood Partnerships and a Mellon ACLS Public Fellow here at the festival. You can learn more about upcoming events and help support the festival by donating or becoming a member at chicagohumanities.org. You can also explore our online archive of past programs, including previous neighborhood check-ins on our website. And while you're there, visit the event page for this event to learn more about community organizing in Chicago, past and present, and how you can get involved. Thanks to our captioner for making this event more accessible. All digital events have closed captioning, which can be controlled through YouTube. You can learn more about accessible services at chicagohumanities.org/access. This program is presented in partnership with the Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture at the University of Chicago. And this week's programs are presented with the support of Bank of America. Now, please help me to welcome Lisa Yoon Lee, Elizabeth Todd Brayland, Jeanette Taylor, and Andrea Ortiz Landon.
Hello, everyone, and I want to thank you all for joining us for tonight's conversation about community organizing. My name is Lisa Lee, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Public Housing Museum. And I want to begin with a land acknowledgement to recognize the Indigenous people who have stewarded the land that we occupy here in the United States. Although we are in many different places because of this virtual event, Chicago resides within the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi people. With over 100,000 Indigenous people, Illinois includes one of the largest populations of Native Americans today. Please take a moment to find out about the history of the stolen land where you reside. I want to thank also the CHF for helping us to organize this event, and also all of you behind the scenes, those cultural laborers who make this work possible. We appreciate you and we see you. And I am so happy to be here with the three of you, fierce women of color, to talk about the power of organizing. From housing, policing, school reform, equitable investment, and environmental justice to immigration, you all have been engaged in one way or another, whether it is providing a much needed analysis, organizing a protest, agitating, or action. And reading about you tonight reminded me so much of the Angela Davis famous quote, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change, but changing the things I cannot accept." Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Yay. Before we dive into our conversation about community organizing, I just want to start in with a check-in about the election. Obviously, that's the context that we're all living with. And also because everyone was so focused on the national, I want to ask you sort of what happened in the local and state level that surprised you, delighted you, aggravated, whatever you. And I just want to start with Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, the amazing alderperson from the 20th Ward, member of the DSA, fierce activist. We really appreciate you. Happy that you're here. Let me check in with you. Like, what are you feeling, about the election and everything?
So a sigh of relief, mostly, even though it was like, I guess one of the Facebook memes said, the ticket checker at Chuck E. Cheese could have counted these ballots faster. I was really tired of the count, like, how the electoral votes kept going up and one station was saying one thing and somebody was saying something else. And it was like, come on already. Like we're waiting for this results. But then when you figured out that Biden got those enough electoral votes, it was a sigh of relief. But then it was also like, we got to put our armor on. He wasn't my first choice. And so I was a sister for Sanders. So for me, it's like, we still got a lot of work to do, because what I don't think ever happens is we never acknowledge, we always got to go to pick the two of the lesser evils. And let's not act like we don't know what Sister Kamala's past was. Let's act like we know Joe was with the crime bill. And so I don't want to ignore that. Of course, it's better than the kid It's another Chuck E. Cheese meme. He like the kid that you take from Chuck E. Cheese. He just don't want to leave. Like, you ever take your kids to the playground, and when it's time to go, you got that one kid that refused to leave. That is actually what's happening.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot
so,
of Chuck E. Cheese memes out there for this election.
oh, it is, but it's the truth. It is the truth. And so I'm excited that, because the difference between 45 and Biden is Biden can be pushed. 45 had his mind made up. He just was going to do what he wants to do. And if you're not the 1%, he doesn't care. Because to him, it ain't about race, it's about money. And I think we just have to acknowledge that. And so I'm surprised Oberweis is giving Miss Underwood a run for a dollar. I'm surprised
Right.
that so many folks voted for Trump. And we flipped a bunch of these states. Georgia is blue now. So I'm excited. I'm feeling a lot better about us doing a good job. And I'll start with this. What I said a couple of days ago, we were so busy organizing the Black and the Latinx vote that we didn't concentrate on our white brothers and sisters. And if you look at those votes, they overwhelmingly, white women in general, voted for Trump. That's problematic, and we're missing a point. We don't have the luxury anymore not to work with each other and at least have those common sense conversations, because people are voting against their interests for all the wrong reasons. And so sometimes we don't organize in those spaces, and we need to.
Thanks so much, Alderwoman. Let me ask you, Andrea Ortiz Landon, who is the lead organizer for the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council, who's also was a youth organizer for a long time, and now is working on a host of issues that crisscross, including policing, city budget, CPS schools, immigration. Welcome. Tell me, how are you feeling about the election, and also what were you looking at in sort of the local arena?
Yeah, great to be here. I feel like I was part of the collective like release of that like deep breath we were holding in, and like while the votes were being counted. But it felt very anticlimactic because we saw the messaging right away where the centrist Democrats and the right was throwing like the radical left under the bus, but it was the radical left who actually won this election for Biden, who were on the ground organizing in Georgia, in Arizona, indigenous communities, turning out 97% to vote for Biden. And it was just really interesting to see how a lot of this played out, and a lot of how like progressive issues that were being voted on the ballot across the board when, like, for example, in Florida, they got $15 minimum wage, but the Republicans won that state. And from the beginning, Democrats were like, we're going to separate ourselves from that because that's too radical. So like what that's telling me, it's like you're not actually listening to folks. And like our issues are winning issues on the ballot that do win. So I just find that interesting. Also very saddened by fair tax not winning here in Illinois.
Yes, completely surprised, right?
Yeah, my parents were very invested in it, and they were like devastated. They're like, no, we're gonna have to pay more in taxes. But it was just really interesting how like fair tax kind of played out, and like Illinois being a typical blue demo state, and like I saw someone on Twitter had put it perfectly. I feel like folks, the Democrats, have also contributed to the disenfranchisement of our communities and have bloated police budgets. So when they're pushing something like fair tax, people just don't believe in them anymore. So I think from the beginning, I don't know, something needs to change. And I just know that the radical left is doing something right. And I'm really happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's right. Unapologetic. Professor Elizabeth Todd Breland, Associate Professor at University of Illinois at Chicago, author, historian who focuses on U.S. history, African-American history, and the history of education, and also community organizing. Her book, A Political Education, Black Politics and Education Reform in Chicago since the 1960s, pretty much one of the best books ever written on this topic, and also has won every single award possible. How are you? I'm also a member of the school board, and so welcome. Tell us, how are you feeling, and what were you sort of seeing and surprised in the, or sort of mesmerized by in the local or state elections?
Yeah, I mean, I think some similar things as my co-panelists here were talking about. I think the point that was made about how what we saw happen this election cycle was the product of years and years of organizing in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania and Arizona, led by Black women, led by Indigenous folks, led by Latinx folks in those communities who had been on the ground doing that really hard door to door, conversation to conversation, community meetings after meeting after meeting after meeting work is part of what you saw paying off in expanding the electorate. And I think what's even more, I guess, phenomenal to me is that they were able to expand the electorate in a context of extreme voter suppression. And I think that can't be overlooked. One of my fellow historians, a woman named Professor Carol Anderson, talks about our current era of voter suppression as Jim Crow 2.0. And what she means by that is like things like the poll tax and the literacy test of the late 19th century and early 20th century are akin to what we see today in closing of polling places, in the long lines that you see for early voting, in felon disfranchisement, and you can go on and on and on. So the fact that folks were able to expand the electorate and get people out in numbers to push Biden over the line, I think really speaks, one, that people understood this as a vote for their own survival, and two, that the organizing infrastructure in these communities was just something really exciting to be seen. I think similarly, I was very disappointed with how the fair tax went. I'll be curious. I don't know enough about, what people were saying or what thinking in terms of why. I think we have a unique political context here in the state, Chicago versus the rest of the state, but also just the Democratic Party in the state is diverse, right? It is a wide spectrum. And so people's trust or distrust in particular political parties is different here, I think. On the upside, what I would say is the vote for the fair tax in Chicago was overwhelming. And I think that's for the fair tax. And I think one of the things that shows us is that people here do have an appetite and a desire for redistributing wealth, for a progressive taxing system. And that's something to be built on.
Thank you. There's a lot of things to be hopeful about and a lot of sort of disappointments in that way. This last week, I was thinking a lot about the great Cape Verdean organizer and anti-colonial thinker, Amilcar Cabral, and his famous phrase, hide nothing from the masses of our people, tell no lies, expose lies whenever they are told, mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures, claim no easy victories. And I've been wondering if electoral politics in some way, even though this election was very hard won, if it is a kind of easy victory, right? But perhaps to suggest that voting ultimately doesn't less than we might like to admit. And so I wanted to maybe start a little bit and ask you, Elizabeth, to help us understand the distinction before we jump into a conversation about community organizing, the distinction between organizing and electoral politics.
Well, I think there should be an understanding that there are many sites of struggle. And there is space and room and opportunity to struggle in many different avenues, whether that be a community organizing context or within the electoral political system. But I think we also know that, community organizing at its base is when members of communities work collectively to meet their shared needs or interests. And that is not always about elections. Often it's not about elections or directed at electoral politics or elected officials. And it's also not generally only about holding elected officials accountable, right? Like there's a wide world of community organizing beyond what happens in the electoral sphere. At the same time, as a historian, I do want to say there have been really, I think, noted and important sites of intersection between fights for the vote, fights in electoral politics and grassroots organizing. And I'll just lift two examples quickly. One I think of always is Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer, Black woman from Mississippi, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee field secretary. She's a representative of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party that created an alternative because she was not recognized. They would not recognize Black candidates in Mississippi. And her work was to organize voters, and that was radical work in Mississippi. right? That was radical work, death threat work, shot at work in Mississippi. And so I don't want us to take away from what the fight for the franchise, honestly, like I was just saying before, the fight for the franchise is ongoing, right? The organizing that Fannie Lou Hamer did in the 1960s helped to push through the Voting Rights Act that has now been gutted as of 2013, right? So that's ongoing work. But at the same time she was doing those things, she was also organizing in sort of a more mutual aid effort. She was organizing for food justice in her community. She was organizing for economic development. So we can hold these things at the same time and understand their value. And I guess to bring it home more locally, I also think about the movement, which is what I would call it, to elect Harold Washington as the first Black mayor in the city of Chicago, as a progressive Black mayor in the city of Chicago, and that his election was the result of a movement, was the result of the leveraging of the organizing power that we saw at the local level. And it really, in some ways, has some parallels to what happened in our national election in terms of the expansion of the electorate. Harold Washington was able to become mayor because Black people were registered to vote in mass, right? And so I think we can see the interplay between these two without valorizing one space or another, and understanding the ways that they are and aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Elizabeth, and a good reminder of like such important sort of coalitions that emerged out of that kind of electoral politics between Brown and Black folks, you know, that continues to resonate here in the city of Chicago. I want to turn it to you, Alderwoman Taylor, and ask, you know, you are sort of a community organizer. Like, I think I first sort of saw you as a hunger striker and the diet struggle. And you've also, you know, as a parent organizer, worked with Coco in Kenwood. Like, talk a little bit about sort of when you realized the power of community organizing. Can you maybe share a story either from the past or maybe what you're working on now that you want people to know about?
So for me, it was before the mass school closing in 2015. I think people forget about Renaissance 2010. And so it's funny when Arne Duncan opens up his mouth to give some advice about something that should go on in the Black and brown community, I laugh at him like he a joke, because you were closing schools in Bronzeville and in the Latino neighborhood way before school closing became a bad word. And so the thought that people would take his advice or take him serious on anything is hilarious. But back when they wanted to close Mollison Elementary, and I couldn't figure out why. You never supported the school. The community was changing. We saw $1 million condos go up. At the same time, years before, we had saw CHA housing projects go down. But what you didn't see was people not return to the only place that was familiar to them, and those were schools. Schools are the last stable foundations that we've had in the Black and Latinx community. And across the country, they have thrown a grenade in it. And so that was the first time that I realized that there is a power and that I was not a voiceless Black woman, because Chicago definitely makes you feel that way. Even as a politician, I'm not, unless I'm cussing or waving my finger, sometimes what I'm saying is unheard of. And see, people's lived experience makes them who they are. And so it's funny, there's this saying that says, until poor people have a right to be elected officials, our democracy is a sham. See, you ain't never been hungry. You ain't never had to feed your kids and go to bed hungry. Or you ain't never tried to figure out how you was gonna get to work when you ain't got enough money on your bus card. And so because you have not struggled, you don't make decisions based on that struggle, which is how we're in this political climate today. Think about this. Elected officials make $120,000 a year. They get free dental and good insurance. And you get a $3,000 raise every 4 years. If you ain't humble when you came in this, you forget about your people. I'm just not gonna do that. You see, there's Fannie Lou Hamer behind me, and you see it's Ella Baker. Those are two women who were ignored and never get they just due. I'll never have to get my just due. They ain't never got to write my name ever. But my people gonna know I fought for them. They gonna know we gonna get it. And we gotta build on this. I hated politics. If you'd asked me 2 years ago to run for office, Elizabeth will tell you, hell no, I'm not gonna run for you. So you mean to tell me I'm gonna go elect the people who we get them in office and then they ignore us for 4 years and then we only see them again when it's time to vote again? I'm not signing up for that. But because I come from the movement and I come from good organizations that A, keep me humble, B, make sure I'm in line, and C, support me when I'm fighting for their issues, I'll do this a couple of more times. And we got to get people, there's no way these two women on the panel shouldn't be elected officials. Period. We get it right. Stop looking like that. That's the same look I had.
Or at least the elected school board, right?
Listen, we are the leaders we've been waiting on. I say that all the time. We ain't got to wait for them. There are no leaders.
Right.
And if you look at what happened with this vote, it's been who? Women of color. So we can change this country.
Yeah, no, and I so appreciate the images behind you, and we definitely need more leaders like you and like Ella Baker, who insisted that strong people do not need strong leaders, right? And so happy that you're there for us. Andrea, let's sort of hear a little bit about your background. I think when you first, everybody, when you first came on the screen, we were like, wow, you've done a lot and you look like you're, 16 years old, but you are fierce. So can you talk a little bit about your background and what, when you realized you also wanted to be an organizer?
Yeah, growing up, I didn't know what organizing was. I was born and raised in Brighton Park, and BPNC had been there since I've been living in Brighton Park, but we just never interacted. Also, my mom was a really strict immigrant parent and didn't even let me go outside and outside the gate of our home. So I couldn't even get far as a kid. So it wasn't until I was in high school. So I attended Curie High School. And that's when I was able to interact and learn from my teachers there. And it's really great to see some of my teachers back in high school still really active in the union now and active in the movement. And even the ones that were I'm not gonna touch this are super active now. So it's just really great to share spaces with them. It's in high school, I felt that's where my thinking was pushed. I felt I was very much in a bubble growing up in my neighborhood, surrounded by people who were just like me, immigrant, low income. I felt that I also grew up in Brighton Park in that area where Burke was my alderman until Rahm came in and then redistricted. So I was one of those families that got turkeys and pies for Thanksgiving from Burke, and he would visit my house, and my parents couldn't vote, and who is this white man just coming and giving us this? It's weird. But then wouldn't do anything else when we asked them to.
Chicago politics, right?
Yeah, so I when people talk about typical pies and chickens and turkeys, I'm that is true because I ate a lot of those growing up. So I just felt I didn't really understand the way that politics played into the dynamics in my community, or the way that it even shaped my identity as a person or my family. So in high school, I feel that kind of opened it up. And when I was graduating, that's when there was the mass school closings and the closing of the public mental health clinics. And that's when I really saw kind of folks just talking about it more, and it was just surrounding me, and I was just immersed in this organizing, and it was energizing and exciting and new, and it just made me feel really powerful. So in college is when I was able to connect with the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council and started working as a college mentor and working with at-risk youth who just needed someone to help translate or be connected to services, and were amazing. And I found myself connecting them to campaigns around education funding and immigration and around DACA. After I graduated from college, I became a full-time organizer with the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council, still as a youth organizer, engaging students around a lot of these issues. And I door knocked a lot and canvassed a lot. And that is so important, especially in this work. I canvassed communities and my neighbors and talk to them about TIFs. TIFs are not sexy at all. Really hard to explain, but we would have the best conversations, and we would talk about taxing the rich and rich having to pay their fair shares. And we would talk about how that's connected to school funding and what does community safety look like. And like one of my first big press conferences with the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council was like, it was during a weekend where there was like a lot of like gang violence and like gun violence, and like violence that summer had gone up 300% in Brighton Park. So we had a press conference with like parents and students in front of Kelly High School, and the messaging was community safety looks like resources and not police. And this was like in 2015 for me. So I was like, whoa, like I've never seen this on Univision or Telemundo. That's not what my parents listen to, or like the messaging that gets to them. So to be there and like hearing this from the community was really powerful for me, and kind of like motivated me to continue to do this like work, and like continue to like listen to what community members are demanding, because they were demanding more resources and like fully funded schools, because schools should be hubs for our community and everyone should feel safe, and that's what sanctuary looks like. And our politicians were talking about like, we need more police in these neighborhoods that have violence that has gone up 300%. And like, that's not what I heard from my community. So I feel like in this work that I'm doing, it's always important for me to center the work of young people, of like the parents and those living in the community, and to make sure that when I'm having meetings with elected officials or stakeholders, that they're also present there, because they're also stakeholders, and should be centered.
I love the way how in your sort of narrative, it was so clear the importance of intergenerational work, and also the importance of linking all these things, right? So if you care about policing and public safety, you sort of have to care about TIF, and you have to care about education, right? And I've always been so excited in Chicago about the community organizers. You know, we always hear about how we live in the most segregated city, how there's, you know, this long history of problems, but, you know, we also are the city that passed reparations, right, against for police torture. And there's a lot of exciting kind of organizing that's happening. Elizabeth, can I ask you, like, what, as a scholar and looking out sort of the landscape of organizing now, what are you most excited about? Like, what jazzes you about organizing now?
Oh, I mean, I think there's so much to be excited about. And I think to your point about just like thinking about our current moment within a longer context, that tension between a kind of top-down political authority or political corporate authority and a equally as strong and robust grassroots organizing movement is nothing that's going away here in Chicago. And it was actually making me think, as I was listening to you all, about one, I don't consider myself an organizer. I'm an educator, I'm a historian, but my first organizing experience in Chicago was when I had just got my first apartment, like my apartment. And they tried to do an illegal condo conversion of my apartment. And someone called in, this was a while back when they did, you know, when condos were popping. And they called, one of my neighbors called the Metropolitan Tenants Organization, and they brought out an organizer and they organized our building. And we started like organizing, you know, marches down the major street near the building, got connected with other people in the community, and just how that built and built and built. And that set, when I was listening to you, Andrea, it made me think of that sense of empowerment, right? Like when you're doing that work, when you're connecting with people in your community, the sense of joy that's there too. And I think that's one of the things that always really impresses me too about Chicago and organizers in Chicago, and maybe is something that I feel now as well, is that like the challenges are immense. It would be very easy, I think, to get dispirited, but the way that organizers in Chicago bring joy to the table, it's just life-giving. And I think that that's really inspiring. It's inspiring to me.
Yeah, that's true. We're the city of house and the city of collective joy and dance and party, right? Along with everything. Alderman Taylor, can you tell me, one, I really just want to know what's happening also with the Obama Presidential Center and the community benefits agreement, that you were so critical in pushing the mayor, pushing the city, and pushing the Presidential Center in, you know, at least finally making some small concession to affordable housing. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in that struggle, but then also what struggle are you engaged in now that you're sort of most excited about?
I don't know if I'm excited about anything because we're in budget season, and the thought that we want to raise property taxes and people want to lose their job. I didn't get into office to do that to folks, and I'm just not going to vote for it. But I'm also not going to be being threatened either if I don't vote a certain way. So I don't take too kind to threat. So we could drag each other. I'm okay with it. When it comes to the CBA ordinance, we're just working on the housing piece. So they've hired a consultant to help us to make sure it's implemented, that we get enough affordable new units, which will help replace some of the housing that we already lost. It's going to help about 60 to 7 homeowners. It's not enough. And so the next fight that myself and the community want to fight for is money in a trust. If you think about the 20th ward as a whole, we're all at risk of being gentrified out. And they didn't want to come to the community before, but because you know the amount of visitors that would have visited the first Black president of the United States museum. Matter of fact, it ain't even a museum, it's a center, it's something. It ain't a library either. That they're gonna visit, you know that you're gonna make money. So since you want to now come to our community, you should pay. And so that's my next fight with the city, between that and the city budget. And it's just, so I say all the time, I hate it here. And let me tell you what that means. I love serving the community that I'm paid to represent. I love organizing with people. I love us even having these conversations around reimagining safety and the police, because I got half of the ward, like my ward is split in a way. So half of them hate the police, the other half love the police. And so, and I lay in the middle, and because I'm paid to represent the folks, I got to figure out how to have those hard conversations. But my coworkers are something else. It is not hard to make legislation that helps one set of folks and doesn't hurt other people. And so it's why I say I hate it here, because they make it too hard. This ain't hard. This is common sense work. You put in an ordinance, you tax the people who could afford it, you don't tax the people who can't. But if you made a living wage in this city, we wouldn't have these tales of two cities. And so I'm just tired of excuses. I'm tired of people who sit in office 20 and 30 years and do absolutely nothing, but continue to collect a check, because that's what they're doing. And so I'm excited about the people, because these conversations that we normally wouldn't have about race, about the disinvestment that happened in the community, about schools being closed, about now that we're in a global pandemic and everybody is suffering, you're still siphoning off the people who are the most vulnerable. It's like we in COVID-19, but we in racism. And we've been in racism forever. And I'm just tired of that. And it doesn't have to be this way. If we flip a couple of seats and change people who are in charge, like we just did, we would get a place that we could be proud of. I love Chicago. I tell people all the time. And my mother was never going to leave. She was, as many opportunities if we got to leave, she was never going to leave. And to some point, I'm grateful she made me stay, because look where I am. But I can't continue to sit in front of young people like Andrea and blame her for chaos that she didn't create. She ain't created these chaos. I tell people all the time, this generation is not lost, it's been neglected. And we better own that.
Yeah, Andrea, do you want to sort of weigh in too? I mean, I'm curious because, you know, in the sort of global uprisings after Breonna Taylor, after George Floyd, you know, there was so much conversation about defunding the police and getting the cops out of schools and things like that. And then now it's sort of flipped in the mainstream media where they're like, oh, that language, you know, sort of maybe pushed, that was bad and we have to like pull back on that. Are you working on policing issues, or what are the sort of major things that you're focused on now?
Yeah, so Elizabeth and Alderwoman Jeanette have been like really great allies at both the Board of Education and City Council, and like all summer have been there supporting us. So as the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council, we got involved in the national fight calling for police-free schools nationally in 2017, 2016. Recognized that like the conditions were right to be calling it, and it was like assault after assault, and it's like we cannot keep letting assaults happen on our young folks and just like stand by and look at it. So the Advancement Project and Alliance for Educational Justice gathered a bunch of folks, youth organizers nationally, and they're basically like, are you all down to throw down together? And then all of our young folks are like, we are so down. And it was like Chicago's like really interesting because like we weren't hearing a lot of these stories like in like Baltimore or New York or Arizona, where like these SROs were like violently like assaulting the students. But where the students are like, it doesn't matter if it's like, we don't have to have an assault at one of our CPS schools for us to demand cops out of our schools. I just don't want them there. They don't make me feel comfortable. They carry guns, and it's like on top of like verbal assaults that have been occurring throughout the years. And also like a lot of like occurrences or interactions with police often go like unreported. So students were really excited, but the parents were not. Uh, so that was really
Oh,
difficult.
interesting.
Yeah, so like the students were like, we're ready to throw down. We think it's important um, to have these like challenging conversations, and it's not just like having police in schools, but talking about the way that our schools are funded and the way that our public neighborhood schools are being closed down and like disinvested in, and like seeing like during that time also was a lot of charter schools popping up near the public neighborhood schools. So like all the students want to go to this new shiny school, and then this school is left with less students, which means less money for the school and less resources. But what didn't change was the amount of police officers in that school. Um, so that was always an issue, and that's how students approach the conversation with parents and community members and challenging them on like what safety looks like. So it's like, if you were to have a fully funded neighborhood school, would you feel for there to be a need for police officers in schools? And it was all often like, no, I would rather not. Even with my parents, I'm like, if you had counselors and like all these stuff, would you need police? And my dad's like, no, why would you need police there then? But then like pushing them and like challenging them to think beyond like policing and not just like schools, but also like in our communities and what that looks like. So we have been doing a lot of like research since 2017. We got the Chicago Office of Inspector General to do an audit on the SRO program, which basically showed what we all know, that like the races, they had no training. And like regardless, like even if they had training does not make their placement in schools any better. It just increases their budget. There's no MOU, and like they didn't have a list of like which officers was where. And from there, we just started doing a lot of like popular and political education with community members, with schools, with LSCs around these officers. Students learned how to FOIA and would have FOIA parties and would teach other students how to FOIA the information. So that's how we got a lot of information from like students learning to FOIA. They taught me how to FOIA, and like that's pretty cool.
And we make sure everybody knows, like, Freedom of Information Act. I just want to make sure everybody knows what FOIA means, right? Like, so do you want to just let the viewing public know what that means?
Yeah, so you basically submit a letter or email requesting information that is legally public to you. So a lot of the information that they would request is the records of the police officers in their school, if they have anything on their records, and so on. And there's this like really great website that you could also plug in the officer's name and badge number, and it tells you what's been on their record, and if they have ever assaulted anyone or if there's anything against them. So from there, we put together a report. And also like throughout this time, there was that horrible incident with Denigma Howard being dragged down and like tased by the SROs. And I feel like that kind of like really like ignited more students and like activated a lot more students to talk about like what the role of police officers really is. It's not really a topic that a lot of people talk about. It's like has been normalized. I was in elementary school and I had police officers in my elementary school, and I would remember like seeing them like handcuff some of my like classmates when we were in like 5th or 6th grade for just because they were disrupting the teacher or whatever. The teacher didn't like what they were saying and like kicked them out, and the officers would take them. Or like our 8th grade field trip was to Cook County Jail. So it's like a lot of these things like have been normalized. Like that's traumatizing. It's like even like for me thinking back of like how my educational experience in CPS has been on the Southwest side in Brighton Park, like I can't believe I had to go through that. And like looking back, like half of my male classmates have now passed away because of gun violence. Sorry. It's just like, it's hard because it's like, you did that to us instead of giving us fully funded school. Like it makes me, I'm so mad about it because like we're still in the same place demanding for there to be a change and it hasn't changed. And don't believe us when we say like, listen, we tried having circles with your little police officers. It doesn't work. Like trainings don't work. So with the uprisings, it kind of just like catapulted us through the campaign. And Elizabeth knows all about it because received thousands of emails from us that we sent to the Board of Education. I think we collected over like 20,000 contacts from like petitions that people have signed in Chicago. Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor helped put forth an ordinance at the city council level calling for police out of schools. And I feel like at the Board of Education level, this is the closest we have ever gotten to potentially getting police officers out of schools. And it allowed us to do a lot of like mass education around the importance of LSEs, the importance of like participatory budgeting in our schools, in our communities, and like pushing people on what safety actually looks like. So a lot of our work has been around that, around police-free schools, and now supporting groups like the Black Abolitionist Network and the Defund CPD campaign, who are also pushing to defund CPD at the city council level. I also do want to say that there were some victories, even though we didn't get police out of schools. We got 17 schools, LSEs, to vote no on maintaining their SRO. So that's like thousands of students that are not going back to school with an SRO. And like, I think $20 million less to their SRO budget. So that is the win, and we're gonna claim that.
Yeah, no, definitely you should claim that. And thank you to the board members that voted for that, like Elizabeth. That was amazing. And I also just want to say, as a member of the sort of museum community and cultural institutions, museums took a lot of inspiration from that education campaign. And, it pushed museums to sort of also say that they would end their contracts with CPD, in other kinds of places. There still needs to be continued pressure. And these cultural institutions, many of which, like the Art Institute, like represent like huge nonprofits in our city who aren't paying taxes because they're 501c3s, like need to be responsible to the communities, right? And so that work has also had resounding sort of impact in other kinds of spaces. I wanted to sort of ask a question. I know now, working in the sort of world of housing, you sort of see how people who are addressing homelessness are actually different than the people who are working on affordable housing, who are different than the people who are working on public housing. And when I look back in successful campaigns like Black Panthers in Oakland, like their posters were all, affordable housing now, we can control housing, then we control schools, then we control the police. Like they have made these connections. And I'm wondering, for each of you, like what are the sort of moments of solidarity that you see or that you wish you would see in our city as sort of organizing happens and starts to and is building movement? Can I start with you, Alderman Taylor?
Sure. To be honest, we're all in some of the same coalitions. It's very hard in Chicago not to work in coalition because we do understand that each one of these issues are connected. I think we hadn't done that before, or we hadn't done it on this larger scale. So people think about what happened to George Floyd as that's a protest just against police brutality. No, that's against all of these racist systems that mistreat our people. So it wasn't just about that, but a lot of times it seems like it's just issue-based. And housing is probably the biggest issue and the biggest problem versus police brutality in Chicago. But think about this. We spend more money on police than we spend on education, housing, and mental health all wrapped up in one. And so does that put young people and low income and working families first? Of course it doesn't. It does not in any way. And so while it might seem like we're not together, believe you me, we're in the same rooms. There's probably not a room I haven't seen either one of them in doing my organizing work. If it was from the hunger strike, it was from the police academy, No Cop Academy. Like, we all in the same rooms and working together. I think we do have to do a better job at tying them together for people that we're trying to get to join the movement. I think that is one of the things that would get the movement moving more. I always say the movement ain't moving, but it's because you never really get to. It's just like the oppressions. They got us so busy that they continue to come up with more rules to oppress us, and we can never be proactive. People always tell me like, Alderman Taylor, you so reactive. Y'all got my life in chaos. I can't prepare my life. Every time I turn around, y'all doing something that causes me and other people that I love foolishness. And so it's like we never get the opportunity to pre-plan our communities. But we're hoping, since we got rid of 45 and that we have an opportunity to work with this newest administration to come in, that we get it right. And I think COVID really it's been a blessing and curse. I hate to say it. I hate the people that we lost. I hate that we can't go outside, but it's given us way more opportunity to have those hard conversations that we just don't want to have, and honestly didn't have time to have it.
What about you, Elizabeth? What are you sort of seeing and sort of lines of solidarity movements, and, sort of what are the groups that you want to shout out or hold up?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at, kind of coming back to something we started with, I really feel like not just here, but nationally, even with the failure of the fair tax, the idea that there needs to be some sort of redistribution of wealth in this country, that it's unacceptable for a small group of people to hoard so much money. And to your point about the way that COVID has exposed inequities that already existed, but just to the, nth degree, you look at like Amazon, right? And these billionaires who've been making so much money while people suffer and don't pay taxes, right? And so I think there is some space around trying to expand the pie, right? We keep fighting over the same pie, but we need more and more opportunities to expand that pie. And I think there is space for a larger multiracial coalition about expanding that pie. And I'll just lift up something like last year, Chicago Public Schools and the mayor's office had these budget equity meetings. And it was basically like to have conversations with people in their own communities about the CPS budget, right? And it was one of the things that I think was really interesting to me is how fired up parents were getting at these meetings about how underfunded our schools were by the state. That was not a widely known thing, like how far away we were from adequacy, CPS only being funded at 60 something % adequacy. And if nothing else, parents were leaving there like, we have to do something about that, right? And we talked about the fair tax and we talked about other things in that space, but I think that being a motivating factor and seeing that as an opportunity to unite across some lines of difference. I also just want to come back to something Andrea said earlier about wins. I want to put forward another type of win that I think this organizing around the uprisings, the organizing around police-free schools, and the attendant issues also did, which is a change in the realm of political possibilities. You all created a space for an expanded imagination, an expanded political imagination about what is possible. And that is profound. To what Jeanette was saying earlier, and this is something, I live in a Black community in Chicago as well. And you have your defund folks and you got your CAPS folks. But the fact that we can have a conversation, that we're pushing conversations across those groups, the fact that, the things that young Black organizers have been saying for several years about not just defund, but divest, invest, right? It's a very different conversation you have when you're with your communities, as you were saying, Alderman Taylor, when you come at it from, if we didn't spend on this, what would you want to spend it on, right? That's a very different conversation. But what I want to stress is that it was bodies in the streets that created that political opportunity. It was the political education work that you were doing and other young people, Black and brown young people all across the city this summer and years before, but really, you know, popping up this summer, that created that new space for political imagination and political possibility. So I hope you see that as a win as well. It's why, and I'll plug this, LSC elections are next week. Please see what the platform is of the folks on your LSC and vote accordingly. We've talked about elections in the beginning. This is a very local election. This is a very specific Chicago thing. Alderman Taylor and I are both former LSC members. Go out there and vote for your LSC and make a difference in your local community. There's opportunity there, and your voice is needed. Folks are needed in those spaces.
Yeah, that's really so important, and that you sort of mentioned all of those wins, because I feel like the way that sort of organizers brought attention to just basic facts, like the fact that we last year paid out $85 million just to settle Chicago malpractice police brutality cases, right? And like, that's the kind of money we're talking about. But then sort of linking that with what we should and could be investing in. And then also going back to what you said earlier, doing it with sort of forms of collective joy and in the streets, and sort of linking that to so many things, like thinking about the BIPOC sort of protests that happened around the Columbus statue, right? And sort of those folks who put their bodies on the line around that issue that was so multi-layered and went back and sort of included sort of the issue of Indigenous land rights, you know, but it was also about police brutality, and it was about everything. So, I mean, all of this is really so great. Let me we have only a couple more minutes left. And so I want to sort of put it out there to you, each of you, and starting with you, Andrea, like, you know, what are you working on right now that you want to tell the people out there in Chicago who are watching this, you know, to like join you, how to get involved, tell them, you know, sort of websites, whatever it is, like campaigns that you want people to be signing up for?
Yeah, I think right now it would be like, for us that we're working on and like putting a lot of work into as BPNC, is the treatment not trauma order that Alderwoman Rosana Rodriguez is kind of helping champion. So that would create instead of police responding to mental health crises, it would be like trained professionals responding to it. So right now the mayor is pushing a co-responder model where it would be like a police officer and a trained professional. And we're like, no, we want someone without a gun who is trained to de-escalate and handle these situations to be responding to this. It's called Treatment Not Trauma. They could find more information on our BPNC website, and also support. We're telling everyone to support and like the Defund TPD campaign that BAN and other Black and brown organizers are helping lead within the city, and really challenging the city in the way that we are able to fund our social services. Like, yes, there is this deficit, but you could defund the police to help pay for that. And like, yes, we lost fair tax, but you could defund the police to help pay for a lot of these like social services that we're asking for, instead of passing regressive revenue solutions that aren't going to help us at all or our communities.
Thanks. Yeah, treatment, not trauma, right? Or right. Yeah. I mean, I think that is the way that organizers have so unleashed our radical imaginations too, of like what would have happened if somebody who was a trained mental health professional showed up without a gun and was skilled in de-escalating issues, as opposed to a police officer who's not trained in those issues. So thank you so much. Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, what do you want people to be engaged in? What are you thinking?
The city budget. We do not keep our eyes close enough on that city budget. While we pay some of the highest property taxes probably in other places, y'all need to know exactly what they spending their money on. People do not know 40% of the city budget goes to policing. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't feel no safer that we spending that money. I'm definitely supporting the the treatment, not trauma campaign that Alderwoman Rosanna Rodriguez is supporting. It's a million things going on because my ward is going to have to coexist with the Obama Presidential Center. And so really thinking about how we do development that includes the community. So I have a process where I have a community development table that's made of nothing but some random community members. They get to have a voice, and the community actually gets to vote on whether we spend our TIF dollars, whether a person gets a liquor license, and whether somebody gets to develop in our community, which never happens. You don't have people who give people that option. I do. I believe in, if you organize around what the community wants to see, long when you're gone, the community is able to hold these institutions accountable. And too often in our communities, they're not held accountable. So I got my work cut out for me, but I'm just grateful to have people around the city who support this work and are actually can be at the table, because what I don't think people ever realized is being an organizer gives me an advantage. It just does, because I get to talk to people every day. I get to listen to what they need and what they really want. And when they want to find out about an issue that's important to them, it's an opportunity for me to learn. I'm not in this space like I know everything. And so I'm doing what Ella Baker said. I sit at the feet of my elders and I find out the history. And that way we're able to move forward. And so I'm just grateful in that way that I have a community of folks that I can lean on. It brings me back to the hunger strike. I thought when I got in this space that I would be alone. And sometimes I do feel like the token Black girl, but then I can open my door and see people like Elizabeth and Andrea that I could call when I can't figure it out, when I'm confused, when I need to be put on point on something. Because definitely I got kids that are in their 20s. I don't know what's going on. I'm confused about a lot. And it's quite different than when I was a young person. You know, I tell people all the time, this thing when it came to the police was not something that I ever, had to endure in my time. That doesn't make me less Chicagoan. That just says I need to be listening to young people about what their experience is. So, just looking at how we get into politics, I feel like we didn't push President Obama like we should at those 8 years he was here. Biden doesn't get off. I don't care who invited him to the barbecue. He does not get to get in that space where we elected you and not push and go for our issues. We need reparations, period. That's a conversation he's not gonna get away with in these 4 years. And so I'm a Democratic Socialist of America. I know, right? Ain't that many of us, but I'm glad I'm in this space because I get to tell them the stories of this is how people live. This is what they experience. People don't know that I have a large immigration population, and not just Latinx, but Africans that live in my ward that we don't even consider them as people, as immigrants. And so the conversation of how to make them safe, how to get them to engage. They're scared of electoral politics. They're scared. They don't want to, and I can't blame them. When people say to me, I ain't gonna vote, I be like, listen, you might not be getting into politics, but it's getting into you. Look at your life. Look at you paying the taxes. Look at your community. This doesn't happen everywhere. So, but I'm excited that I got some folks to stand behind me.
Thank you so much. And thanks for raising up the issue on the budget. I want to give a quick shout out also for Chicago United for Equity, who's been running sort of the people's budget out there. It's so important for us and not to be daunted by sort of the professionalization of economics and sort of, all these numbers. I mean, that's like the ruse to keep us out of our business, Last thoughts, Elizabeth Todd Breland, Professor?
Yeah. I'll lift up an educational resource as I'm just thinking about the history of organizing in the city. There was a documentary that came out a couple years ago called 63 Boycott about the 1963 mass boycott of Chicago public schools for education equity, for desegregation around a number of different issues. And I was fortunate enough to be a historical advisor on that project, but they recently put out a curriculum for 6th through 12th graders. And you can find that on the 63 Boycott website. I think it's 63boycott.com or org. There should be links somewhere, I think, in some of this information. I also, again, want to plug local school council elections. They are next week. Please come out and vote for your local school council members. And then finally, I guess I just want to also thank my co-panelists, also you, Lisa, for opportunities to learn. I think that's something, Alderwoman Taylor, that I really appreciate. I have so much learning to do. I'm a teacher and I always have so much learning to do. And so I think the opportunities to listen and learn, particularly to young people, is something that I care very much about and want to continue to seek out opportunities to do. And that's a personal thing. Like, I need to seek those opportunities out more for myself, I know.
Yeah, and I definitely want to take this opportunity also as a member of Chicago Torture Justice Memorials to sort of let people know that the mayor had appointed a committee, which I also serve on public monuments, memorials, and historical reckoning. So there's a lot of conversation happening now, necessarily, but maybe not behind closed doors about the future of monuments, memorials, and just to note that the memorial around Chicago Torture Justice has not been funded yet by the mayor. It's the last piece of the reparations legislation that has not been fulfilled. And so we really need to keep up the pressure who our city recognizes as part of the denizens and the history that we tell. Really makes a difference, especially going to what you said, Elizabeth Todd Breland, about sort of, what do we learn about one another and each other, and, from what can we possibly learn from history. Thank you so much, all three of you, for this amazing conversation. I want to sort of let people know out in the audience that on the Chicago Humanities Festival website, there is a sort of resource page that each of the panelists have sort of put links to their organizations, the work that's doing, and how you can find out how you can get engaged, because that's ultimately what it's also about. So please join me in thanking these amazing panelists, Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, Andrea Ortiz Landon, and Professor Elizabeth Todd Breland. Yay!